Hey, this is Jamey with Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in Flesh and Blood. So this is a new collectible card game that I've heard a lot about, especially from the Covenant podcast, Team Covenant, and so I wanted to finally try it out. It looks like this. I bought some Blitz booster packs. Blitz is a format in the game where your hero starts with only 20 life, or typically around 20 life, I believe, and the games can last between 10 and maybe 25 minutes. We played a learning game. Four of us got together and we played two duels where we mixed people up. The first game took about an hour. It was kind of a learning game. We were stumbling through it. There's a lot of text on the cards. The next game really did take around 20 minutes, which was awesome to have a streamlined dueling game in that way. There's a lot to talk about in the game. If you know Flesh and Blood really well, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, because obviously I'm very new to this game. I've only played it twice. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to touch upon some of my favorite mechanisms in the game, me coming from it as typically a tabletop board game designer, but I have a lot of experience with Magic the Gathering. So let me start with my favorite mechanism of the game, and then I'll branch out from there. My favorite mechanism is that in Flesh and Blood, and again, if you know the game really well, feel free to correct me in the comments below, but I will try to be as accurate as possible. I did play twice, I did learn the rules, all that stuff. My favorite mechanism is that on your turn in Flesh and Blood, you have one action. You do one thing. That's it. You do one thing. Sometimes that's a thing on the cards that are printed on the table that you already have in play, which there aren't many of. I'll go into that in a second. But oftentimes it's just playing a card. And when you do, you have to pay this cost in the upper right-hand corner of the card, and you play that card. And oftentimes it is part of an attack. Because in Flesh and Blood, you are a single hero. You are a hero, and the cards that you're playing are like they're types of attacks, basically, or they represent, like, this is the Herald of Rebirth. I was playing this Prism character. It kind of represents these entities that are coming in to help you with this attack, and then they're going to go off and do their own thing. Unlike Magic the Gathering, where you play cards and they stay on the table, which I think is actually a big asset for this game. So you're playing often an attack card and trying to deal damage to your opponent. And again, like I said, you're only doing one action. So you are streamlining your entire turn down to doing one really important thing. However, there's a number of cards in the game. I don't think I had a ton in my deck, but there are some in the game that say go again, which means take another action. And sometimes those things are conditional. And so you might take one action and then you might maneuver yourself a little bit or play a specific card so that you can go again. And so what starts off as a very streamlined turn can often turn into what feels like a really powerful turn because you've gone again multiple times. But I love that the default is just one action. It feels like every turn really, really matters in this game, but it also feels really good when you find a way to take more than one action. So that is the main thing that I really, really love about the game, but there are a lot of little things that go into that. One is at the end of your turn, you play a card by paying this cost, but you do that by discarding cards that have that cost in their upper left-hand corner. So if I pitch this card, I gain one of the resource that I can spend to play this card, and I might need to pitch multiple cards to pull that off. There's no like mana system in Magic the Gathering. Instead, every card has utility as to whether or not you can pitch it if you want, or you can play it. So there's this constant decision making that you have to do. Do I keep this card in hand? Do I play this? Do I pitch it? It reminds me a little bit of Marvel Champions. Marvel Champions is a pretty similar system, if I recall correctly. And at the end of your turn, and so all this that ties to this casting cost system and how you pitch cards to pay for cards. And at the end of your turn, you draw back up to 4 cards, or you draw back up to your hero's intellect. Each of your heroes has a little number down here. I know I'm not going to focus correctly here, my camera won't, but my hero's intellect was 4, so that means every turn I draw back up to 4 cards. So instead of, in many games, you just automatically draw 1 card at the end of your turn, instead, you get to refill your hand at the end of every turn. That is really, really nice. It feels really, really good, and it makes a big difference because you are pitching cards to pay for cards. That makes a big difference. So I really like that. One other element that I mentioned that I think this is an asset. So I mentioned that you play a card, and like an attack card, you'll play it, and then it'll just disappear. It'll go away. And that may seem like a loss because you don't have progression in the game in that way. You're not building an engine on your Tableau. But there are certain cards that do that. I had auras in my deck that had a little bit of that sense of progression in terms of what I was building on the table. However, I think this is actually an asset in the game because at any given time, the cards on the table, there aren't that many cards on the table. You always have your hero out there, and you have some equipment that you started the game with next to you on the table. You come into battle equipped with the stuff that you wanted to use. But other than that, very few cards are sticking around, which makes it really easy to parse the stuff that you have on your side of the table and not be overwhelmed by the stuff that your opponent has on the other side of the table. The cards can add up. I played some opponents that had, or an opponent that had this deck, and this is the Levia deck, and they were able to accumulate a number of cards that matter to them. I think some were in their discard pile that they could draw from that pile. But in the end, you're not creating this giant tableau of stuff to keep track of. It's just a few little things to keep in mind as you take your turn. I really thought that was great. And two other things. One other little thing I wanted to mention is that they did this clever thing in this game where you might have two cards that look the same, they're named the same, but they have slightly different cost, or they have slightly different pitch values. So for example, this card, only when you pitch it, you only gain 1 resource. However, it does 7 damage as part of that attack, and it does 3 defense. I think the main difference here is the damage. So only 1 pitch, 7 damage. This card, when you pitch it, is worth 3 resources. However, if you attack with it, it's only worth 5. So these cards I like that they were able to use the same art in a way and use the same card mechanisms, but still offer a little bit of variety within those cards. And a little bit of guidance here, because I know if I draw this one, I'm probably going to pitch it. This is a really good card to pitch. If I draw this one, this is one that I probably want to play because it's dealing more damage. I thought that was really clever. And last, the core of the game is that you are dueling. Like I mentioned earlier, you are one character that is dueling your opponent. And that felt really good to me. I liked that. I liked that everything came down to these two characters. There was meaning behind those two characters. Whereas in Magic the Gathering, as much as I love Magic, I don't feel any connection to the creatures that I'm playing on the table. There's so many of them. They're disposable. But because there's only one of them in this game, there's only you against them, leaning into that theme and getting immersed in that theme, I thought was really, really easy. I was Prism when I was playing this game, and I was using my array of attacks to try to win. I like that thematically quite a bit. I know this is just touching the surface of what this game is, but it was fun to play. Fun enough that we definitely played it twice in a row. And I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below if you've played it, if you have a favorite mechanism in this game. That's my thought. Those are my thoughts on Flesh and Blood. Thanks.